and welcome to TTV and to our weekly show Tea Talk, where we'll be discussing latest updates, news, what's buzzing on the social media, and all that you need to know to have that ease of living in this beautiful country. What we'll be talking about this week would be about employment of local workforce, as well as the ministerial decisions, the amended ministerial decisions that has been issued starting from this year, and all that has been going on in the sector of Ministry of Labour. And for that matter, we have one of our all-time favorite guests joining us today. So without further ado, let's welcome Mr. Shahswar Balushi, who's a private consultant. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us today. What a pleasure to have you after such a long time.
Thank you, Madihan. It's good to be with you again and in your show and to talk about this interesting subject.
Absolutely, sir. So before we start getting into the details, I just wanted to start with this year. Ministry of Labour has been pushing a lot about, job opportunities for the locals in the Sultanate of Oman. And earlier this year, they said that, they are targeting to give job opportunities to about 35,000 locals in the country. Do you think that target would be achievable?
To really answer the question, we really have to go a little bit back and look at the dynamics of things as that brought us to where we are today. 2014, that's when we first faced the first shock of oil price drop. The drop was sudden and it was big in a very short time. Our expectation was this would be short-lived. It lasted for 5 years plus before it started to go up in a nice, relatively good way. And then suddenly we got the COVID in 2020. Both have impacted the economy, have impacted the companies, have impacted their ability to recruit, to do jobs, availability of projects and businesses. And we started to see shrinkage, austerity measures, taxes, fees increases, etc., to try to handle this economic shock. The COVID really put a big nail into the whole subject matter, and businesses suffered extensively. Workforce in general shrunk quite a lot. About 450, 500,000 people left the country in different levels of work, and therefore the workforce shrunk by at least 35-40% if you look at that number. Employability of the 35,000 or achieving that, it will only happen in an effective way if we can create new good job opportunities. Okay? If we are seeking to do this through replacement of expatriate workforce, then we should be able to have to live with the idea that give the opportunity for Omanis to build their own experiences over the period. So they should be protege to somebody and allow them to build the experience as they go forward. And again, the flexibility of employing the Omani and making them preferred choice is something that the ministry has to work on very hard going forward.
Yes, sir. Yeah. Now, talking about the job opportunities and the local workforce in the country, the government's one of the top priorities are to create job opportunities or to employ the local workforce in the country. How do you see the implementation of it?
Priority is a good terminology. Local workforce employment is should be a priority for everybody. That's fine. But I believe the regulation or the regulatory framework in place is hindering that aspect. It's changing the priority to a word called burden. When you cannot manage the effectively allowed to manage your human resource, okay, then the human resource becomes a burden. Profit-making organization, whether they are private or government-based, they need to have skilled, competent, productive, and efficient human resource. The way you achieve this is by allowing the organization to manage them, how they recruit them, how they make them redundant, how they get rid of non-productive people, and you give them that flexibility. Okay? If you're removing that flexibility from the equation, the priority becomes a burden. And if you're making the local workforce more expensive by implementing the regulation of minimum wage only to them and not to the total workforce, then suddenly they become also not value for money. Because value for money has to be there. At the minimum wage, you add a little bit above that, you can get a good engineer, 5-year experience maybe from India or from Filipino, right, versus just getting a fresh graduate, unskilled, because minimum wage is intended for relatively non-skilled individual, as we speak on, at least here in Oman. So priority becomes a burden if the regulation is not supporting the priority concept. And we have to look at the priority concept in that context. And I don't want to talk about Omanization. I think we should shift from Omanization in terms of numbers. When you look at reducing expatriates, automatically your Omanization numbers goes up.
Right.
But we should look at a different formula, and I think we should base our formula on what we call in-country value. And one of the ideas was to measure the in-country value of Omanization by how much of the total salary a company pays is going towards the local workforce. So if the ministry says from your X amount of salary, if it's 30% or 40% or 25%, should be targeted towards the local workforce, that's a much better measure of Omanization, if you call it that way, in an in-country value perspective.
Right. So here, actually, you're saying that the number of Omanis in the company kind of doesn't matter when you actually have a targeted in-country value. That's what really matters here.
Yeah, it's like this. If I have a company that pays 100,000 Riyal salaries a month, and he's employing 100 people, and 40 people are Omanis, and 60 are non-Omanis, expats. But this 40, he pays for them 10,000 Riyal in terms of salary. So it's 10% of the salary package goes to this. 90% goes to the expatriate, which is the 60%. 90% of that salary is actually taken outside the country.
True.
Okay, what remains inside the country is relatively 20%. So the in-country value of the salary package of 100,000 per month, in-country value is 20,000. Versus when you say that 100,000 salaries, I want 30% or 40% go to local.
Despite the number of Omanis.
Despite, I don't care. You can hire one Omani and pay him that amount of money. Yes. I don't care. But that's the way it should be looked at. And at the same time, the 10% remaining from the expatriate, the totality here becomes 50% of the salary package remains in country. So the in-country value is there, purchasing power is there, business creation is there.
That's a very different take on Omanization, sir, here.
Yeah, that's a take when you look at it in the perspective of in-country value, not on numbers.
Yeah.
So we have to shift now away from the number game and look more of the value game.
Right. Because
which is,
if I'm not wrong, numbers, they don't really matter as long as you have a good in-country value coming in.
Exactly, yes. The number will fit in automatically as the economy grows, right, and as the purchasing power grows. The more I am able to spend, the more businesses are able to open, right, as an economy, yes, and more people are employed.
Right. Now, sir, if I'm not wrong, before COVID hit the world and before it came to Oman, there were already on-job training or recruitment process for local workforce was already in place. But due to COVID, everything was halted. The operations were stopped almost everywhere in the world. Do you think that COVID had a huge impact on the training process of the local workforce here?
COVID had impact everywhere around the world, and it had a very huge impact everywhere. In terms of recruitment, of course, during COVID period, a lot of companies in different sectors had to lock down. So they had to make people redundant. They could not support salaries in that context. Not only Omanis had to be made redundant, but also, expatriate, but also Omanis had to be made redundant. Many companies could not pay salaries on time, etc. So people, the community, the society in Oman, COVID brought a new economic dynamic which they did not experience before. The fact that businesses can actually close down. Situation can come where everything will close down. Okay? Now, this is one. Second thing, COVID has created inflation worldwide. Now that by itself, whatever we are a consumer-based market. Whatever we buy from outside is costing us more, whether raw material for manufacturing or finished goods for us to consume. And therefore now the value of a currency, whether it is dollar, euro, or Omani riyal, its purchasing power as a currency has dropped. The salaries have not gone up. And on top of that, people were made redundant. On top of that, they're not getting paid salary. And some were given furlough, means take a holiday and we'll pay you half, etc., and so on. So this is the impact of COVID on the society and on everybody. Of course, training, you can't train people when you can't hire them and you cannot retain them. First things goes away are events, advertisement, training. These are excess for organizations which are looking to make profits. So yes, it has affected, and it has affected negatively, yes.
You know, sir, talking on the replacement and Omanisation, there are also highly skilled jobs that have been taken up by the expat community living in the Sultanate. When we're talking about replacement and Omanisation, you know, being implemented in the country, how do you see that working?
Okay, you're talking about specialty jobs. Jobs that require a certain skill sets, a certain knowledge base, and a certain level of experience. All of these three items require time to be acquired as assets. New recruits will have those sets of assets over time, and if they are mentored and coached effectively. So let's talk an example of, for example, yourself as a reporter or an anchor. You grew with the industry, you built that skill sets, and you are now an anchor. Now, if I bring somebody else to protege with you, maybe, I don't know, Fatma, then Fatma has to work with you as an assistant anchor. You have to teach her the skill sets of how to prepare for an interview and to become an anchor. You will give her a little bit of opportunity to interview the guest, maybe 1 or 2 questions, and so on and so on. After a while, Madiha goes off on holiday. Then Fatma takes over courageously. Maybe the first couple of programs she's going to be nervous, etc., but she will hold her water. When Madiha comes back from holiday, maybe Fatma is reached now to have a small little program of herself. So now what we have done is we have done a local brew of specialty skills. And we can do the same, and we are, I think, with doctors, engineers, researchers, etc. For example, like your husband, he's a researcher, and he writes papers. In a scientific papers. So I can't go do that write paper, even though I may be a good writer.
Right.
But if I don't know that skill sets, of scientific skill sets, I can't write that paper. You have to have that knowledge of research, science, in that topic, subject, etc., and so on, to be able to do that. Right. But if you don't have it, you don't have it. Now, the reason we bring speciality from outside, and we should bring specialities from outside, because we lack them. But over time, I mean, today we have very good doctors, we have very good engineers, we have CEOs, Omanis, they are very good.
In the banking sector?
In the banking and outside the banking sector, everywhere, in logistics and so on. We have good workforce, relative to what we had before. But it took 50 years to get here.
True.
Yeah?
So it comes gradually.
It's a time. The time plays the role, the training, the development, the coaching, the mentoring, the protege type concepts, and so on. That's what creates the skill set and the speciality.
Right, sir. So what
and just to add on, for example, we have a lot of people who have retired, whether they were, for example, ministers or they were businessmen or etc. and so on. That's group of people with that knowledge and capacity. We are not utilizing them. We are not calling them as a think tank. We are not bringing them to try to benefit from their knowledge and experience. We should do that, whether in the government sector, whether in the private sector, profit-based organizations. You should have a think tank coming in. Universities, they should say, okay, so and so on, please come work with us on this particular subject matter. Okay, we need your expertise and experience. In Japan, they do that. Japan, they have a huge set of old age people. They tap on their knowledge and experience. We should be doing that now because I think we have that cadre available.
Yes, that is a very interesting approach, actually. You know, talking about this approach, sir, there are people who you spoke about replacement. What I understood from your replacement, there was no physical replacement. You mentioned about somebody getting trained while being on the job and, you know, observing and learning the ropes. So talking on the same lines, you know, there are companies and organizations in Oman who actually took Omanization on another level and they let go of their employees without having a proper replacement. So that seat, that position remained vacant. Do you think that is fair to let go of your employee just in the name of Omanization and saying that this post is only for Omanis without actually having a local, you know, like a local contender for that post? And even in that matter, shouldn't there be a proper handover to the job when you have a fresh graduate, let's say, taking over the position?
Okay, I think there has to be a balanced formula between the regulator, who is saying this job needs to be localized. A local individual should do this job. And the company ability to localize that job. Okay? So when the regulator says that we would like to localize the medicine industry, the doctors, okay, then the regulator should say this job should be localized over the next 5 years. All right? After studying how many specialist expat doctors are there, how many doctors are being produced in different specialties, right, to determine that yes, 5 years is sufficient to create that, or actually 10 years is required. Okay? So the regulator should not just wake up in the morning and say, this job should be localized. Right. The regulator should wake up in the morning and say, let's research, these are the jobs we need to localize, and let's find out whether the skill sets are there and how many can we produce and how long will it take to actually achieve that objective. And then tell the companies that you have these 5 years, starting from today, you need to hire a protege, and you need to train them, and you need to coach them, and you need to hire 1 or 2 or 3 so that you can pick the best, okay? And the others, you may train them, but they may move some other places. So that type of approach is a balanced approach to the concept of, if the companies are telling me that I'm releasing a skilled specialist expatriate because the ministry said we should localize, I think that company is doing something wrong. I don't think the ministry told him to get rid of his skill sets in order to know. I think what they are trying to do is to say, okay, I am going to reduce the headcount. I'm going to reduce the unskilled individual, so my headcount of Omanization becomes big. And that's why I think headcount is not the right measure of local workforce. It's more we should look in-country value. And in-country value not only in terms of salaries, but by bringing this idea of skill sets, competencies, productivity, and efficiency, we should find a mechanism to measure all this in all organizations, whether they are owned privately or by companies. And I think the ministry themselves are doing with the KPIs. Yes. It's coming in with the concept of KPIs, et cetera, and so on. We have to change. We have to change the way we look at how the workforce is being handled. We have to look at the workforce in totality. Foreign investments, whether investments in general, whether it's local, regional, or foreign, they look at the concept of ease of doing business. How easy is it to do business in Oman? How easy is it to recruit? How easy is it to set up a company? How easy is it to get licenses? How easy to do the day-to-day activity of my business? Only when they find out that this is relatively easy than to any other country, then the investment promotion becomes automatic and it becomes effective. Yeah? But if you invest, you do a promotion for investment, and then the investor comes and finds out it is not easy to do business because you have got these laws and this regulation and this, that, and this, that, then it's a futile. You wasted money on the promotion, which you got no results out of it. You should look at that first, how easy to do business. Part of how easy to do business is to have the right workforce balance as a whole, okay? And that's totally changing. For example, I give you another example outside the box. The crypto industry, 10 years ago, was zero. 10 years later, at its peak, it was 3 trillion. Okay? I see crypto industry, the banks, the financial institution, if they don't adapt, here or anywhere else, they will become like a dinosaur. They will die. Because the crypto is a currency. Crypto, you can transfer money instantaneously. Crypto, you can borrow money. Crypto, you can fund projects with crypto. You can do everything that the bank does today as an individual, and you can make the decision as an individual, decentralized, defocused. So if the bank doesn't evolve, we will have a lot of our money which are we going to become redundant because the banks became a dinosaur. So again, the world is changing, the formula is changing, the workforce changing. We have to change on how we look at our workforce, skill sets, specialities, everything.
Yes, you're right. You know, just about, I think, last week or 2 weeks ago, I had somebody talking about artificial intelligence here and how they were telling, he was sharing that we are far behind where artificial intelligence is heading in future. People like, cashiers or truck drivers, they might be at the risk of losing their jobs because artificial intelligence is the future from now on. If you do not adapt to it, you'll be left behind.
Absolutely. We had a professor from Kellogg University in the US. He's actually an Indian professor. I forgot the name, but he's Singh. He was an eloquent speaker and a professor in knowledge. I mean, one of the examples he gave us during that particular seminar on artificial intelligence, you said there are now softwares that can read contracts. You give contract A and contract B, and they compare both contracts together, and then they tell you where the differences are.
My goodness.
They can paint if you give them the subject matter. They can paint artificially and produce the picture that you want. So the artificial intelligence is a world of its own. That's another dynamic versus so many other dynamics that are in place.
Yes.
Yeah, things are going to change.
Right.
And if we don't change fast enough, we will find ourselves behind. Yes. As well as economy, for example, because of COVID, you talked about COVID as well and the impact of COVID. Because of COVID, many economies have suffered. So they all, at the same time, for the first time, they are all looking for investment. Whether you are in the States, whether you are in Saudi Arabia, whether you are in Hong Kong, anywhere, they're all looking for investment. They're all looking to tap on that investor's pocket. So some of them are very aggressive. For example, Saudi Arabia has done many aggressive things which we did not expect 10 years ago.
Right.
Okay, but they need to do it in order to attract investors. Okay, Vietnam is doing some huge potentials, etc., and so on. So it depends on how aggressive you are. It depends on the package that you offer. It depends on the environment, the ease of doing business. You can create opportunities, and it is the role of the government to create opportunities. It is not the job of the Ministry of Manpower to find me a job.
Right, sir.
He's not a headhunter, the minister or the ministry. I should find a job for myself. If I'm relying on the ministry to find me a job, there's something wrong. And if that is the norm in the society, then there's something wrong in the society. The Ministry of Manpower is a regulator, is an organizer of the workforce in the country. They issue the regulation and the laws. They are not headhunters. We should not look at them as headhunters. When they come into me and they say, yes, we are going to get 35,000 jobs, this is not your job. Literally, this is not your job. He has to do it for the reasons of the existing regulation. So he has to change the regulation to get out of this. This should be my job as an individual, or any young guy who's looking for a job, or even me as I'm looking for consultancy work, create opportunities for myself. It's my job. I can't go and wait at the ministry's door and say, find me a job. That culture should change.
Right. Now, last question for you, sir. I know we spoke about Ministry of Labor, the job opportunities and everything. One recent thing that the Ministry of Labor has done, that they have issued a decision mentioning the reduction in expat visa fee by about 85%. Do you think with that kind of ease now, a lot of expats would be coming into the country?
I don't think the fee will have an impact on number of people coming in or going out. First of all, that fee should not have been risen in the first place. The fee was risen in order to get extra money into the government's coffer. It's not for controlling the expat movement. It was introduced at the wrong time as well. You know, I really don't know why the fee was there in the first place. Yeah, people moved out not because of the fee. They moved out because companies could not pay salary, they did not have businesses, there was a lockdown and everything. So the fee is not there. Now, I think the government is realizing that these fees is impacting the potential for investment, not for potential for bringing workforce, it's for investment. It's one of those things of ease of doing business. You know, if I come over here and I need to get my specialist, I have to pay him 2,000 riyal every 2 years or every year. It's too expensive. For me, some companies may think this is too expensive, and therefore they would say, "No, sorry, I will go somewhere else." Yeah. So I think that fee, it was natural that it should be coming down completely because it was raised for not the right reasons, in my opinion. Yeah. So that's why it's there. Again, I think also some other thing which is important for the viewer is the oil price that has come in as a dynamic or as a result dynamic of the Ukraine war.
Yes.
That sudden increase will come with it a sudden drop. Because after they reach an agreement, let's say Ukraine and Russia, inshallah, in a very short time, there will be a drop below where we actually have because the market has to adjust.
Right.
And then gradually come up. And it may come up to where it was or come up a little bit lower. But yeah, the government, we should not yet party. We should be prudent. We should continue with our austerity measures. We should keep our budget as it is. We should try to reduce the debt. The debt is very cumbersome. Right. It reduces our rates, it reduces the government borrowing power at the right prices, etc., and so on, stimulating our economy. The minute we reduce our debts, it used to be half a billion riyal, 500 million riyal in 2014. It is 20 billion today. It's huge. We gotta come down.
Right, sir.
And I think that's where our focus should be.
Well, on that note, sir, I would like to thank you for joining us today. It was definitely a very informative discussion with you, trying to cover as much as possible within the 30 minutes. Thank you so much once again for joining us. It was a pleasure having you over.
Thank you very much, Madiha, and thank you for the team. And look forward to be with you again in another show.
Thank you so much,
Thank
sir.
you.
For more interesting videos and updates, stay tuned and keep watching TTV.